Bigger case?
It's fine. It works great.
Seems like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. It was fun.
Are you bragging about your fans right now?
Well, no, we always get into this because I like smaller cases because I think that it's like kind of a challenge and it takes some time to like actually build and get everything put together and everything put in right. And Matt likes bigger cases because you don't have to worry about it.
But, if you're not willing to put in the effort, that's fine.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's
good.
I stuff the components in until it's at a point where it starts, and then I pretty much call it good.
It was some real underhanded smack talk, I think.
That's what happened when we built
the
these test rigs for the Threadripper review. Brad very nicely laid out his cables, and I literally didn't hook up the power button because the motherboard had a power button on it. So whenever I started it, I just pressed the one on the motherboard. It's like, what? It's a test rig. It works.
It works. What does it matter? That's exactly it.
I cleaned it up later. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
What are you going to do without those kinds of issues since you're
I don't
not
know.
going to be here? Right?
I don't know.
Yeah, you're going
I'll have to do it on my own. I'll have to have my roommate like come in and mess with my computer.
Just mess it up.
I'll
Don't tell me what you do.
What's wrong with it?
Just mess up the computer. Well, let me wake up in the morning. Don't tell me when you're going to do it, man.
I don't know.
Make it a surprise.
Once a week, you just take the side panel off your case. You're just like, do your worst.
Let's see it. Hide the RAM somewhere in the house.
All right, let's get going live here. Hello, everyone. This is Close to the Metal. This is our weekly computing podcast where we go in depth with different computing topics. And today we are talking about AMD in general with the Threadripper and the Vega GPU, and also just how that compares to Nvidia and what AMD is doing in the market right now. I think our main question that we put up since we are broadcasting live is, should you buy the AMD RX Vega instead of the Nvidia GTX 1080? I'm curious what people think, if you're ready to make the switch, if you haven't gone over to AMD yet, or how you feel about that. And we're going to go kind of in-depth on a lot of different things with this topic. So we want to hear your questions, your comments. Go ahead and drop those in there. I'm Greg Nibbler, and to my right, for the last time on Close to the Metal, at least for a while, unless you make a guest appearance or something. Yeah. I don't know. Or maybe you're not allowed back in the building. I don't know how that would work. It is Brad. Brad, so this is your last episode.
Yep. This is my last episode. Been at Digital Trends 4 years now, almost. So it's been a long time, and I'm excited for some new opportunities. And sad to be leaving. I'm gonna miss everybody here, and it's been a lot of fun. But yeah.
Anyway, it's funny in radio. When I was in radio, if like it was your last day, or you either let go or you just quit, they would never allow you back on the air because they'd be afraid of what you would do. so now I'm a little curious.
Well, maybe we were having this podcast. Maybe we were having this podcast on a Friday. We would be pretty worried.
Thankfully, it's Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Not too much damage.
There's still a few more days.
Okay. All right. That's true. All right. And then, of course, on the end,
Matt Smith.
It is Matt Smith. All right. So let's take a look here. As like I said, as we get the comments and questions coming through, talking about this. AMD, this has been a frequent topic for us here on this show. They have just made such a push over this last year to compete with everybody. It feels like on all ends, especially, they already kind of had the lower end. Now they're going for the higher end. We have the AMD Threadripper, which you guys just did a full review on that, correct? And I believe if you're watching live, we have a Threadripper sitting here right in front of us.
Yeah, so
everyone watch
your threads.
Threadripper. It does still sound like a metal name, but
it's a good name for a chip, though. They said if they weren't, they'd name it something with numbers and boring if they didn't name it that. So
Threadripper's a great name. Yeah, that's fantastic. It either sounds like it could be like a new Marvel character or like a 1980s wrestler, or a metal band. It's any of the above. That's a solid name choice. That's Threadripper and the Undertaker.
To be fair, Intel has cool product names too, but they always get rid of them before launch. They always call them. They're like, "This is Skull Canyon." You're like, "Badass," and then they're like, "No, actually, it's like
we
a Core
can't
i9.
let the general public hear that."
Yeah.
That'd be awful.
Tiger Lake, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. No, actually, that's a Core i5. Okay,
it's true.
77 480T.
Okay, well, so clearly AMD is winning in the naming battle. That part we know. But as far as performance, so we've got the Threadripper in here. What all do we have actually just here on the table, just so we can showcase for people who are watching live, if they're tuning in and wanting to see what we've got here. So we got the Threadripper.
We have a Threadripper, and this is it's the big old chip in a Lucite case. This one doesn't work. It's just a display model.
Okay.
We've got a couple Intel chips here. We have an X299 platform, so a Core i9. Or a high-end i7 of some sort. They don't label the chips when they send them to you before release. And we've got another one here that's a regular size Intel chip. So you can see just if you're watching how big the difference is. It's pretty It's a
you
pretty.
take
Yeah,
the
how much bigger
Threadripper
is
chip-
that? Like
chip
as far
out?
as actual physical size, what would you say?
So
Another-
this is the kind of chip that you would normally see in like your regular desktop, you know.
Okay.
And that is Threadripper.
Wow,
So-
that is probably what 4 times
You know,
the size.
even like
At least,
a
yeah.
high. This
that is a gigantic card.
Isn't that cool?
This
that is pretty cool.
You know, probably like a.
Did they emblazon
7700K.
DT on it too?
Yeah, of course they did.
That's pretty okay. That's another smooth move by AMD.
yeah,
that's
I
really
mean,
cool.
Yeah.
and this one was his Intel Confidential on it. That's always the
That's their
thing
standard.
there. So that's their
Okay.
standard
Yeah.
for review
And
chips.
even Intel's like bigger chip. You know, this is their bigger chip.
Yeah,
And you
taking a
can
look
see
at so
Threadripper
Intel's
is still about
Threadripper is
twice
still
the
physically
size.
much
Yeah,
larger.
it's big.
as we can see. All right, so it is big. It's winning the size battle. Alex is saying I have a PC coming and I buy a power soon. Super excited. Cannot get the latest video card, but let's hope it will do. I think he's trying to say that he's excited about the AMD video card, is what I'm gathering there based on that comment. But yeah, let us know in your comments, questions, you know, and the overriding question that we had here too is, you know, would you buy the AMD RX Vega instead of the Nvidia GTX 1080, as we're going to get into talking about the GPUs here in a second. Anywhere else we want to go here with the Threadripper and just kind of what they've done with that?
What do we want to talk about that before we talk about Vega? Before
Yeah,
start
maybe we
getting
should do
into
that.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Let's talk about the Threadripper.
Yeah, so Threadripper, we had talked about on a previous podcast, I believe a little bit, but that, or actually maybe a lot of it, but that was before we actually did the full review of it. Mm-hmm. And now that we have done the full review of it, we know how quick it is,
Yep.
and the answer is really, really, really fast.
Mm-hmm.
It just pretty much smashes the price equivalent Intel chip, which is what the Core i9 7900X. Correct?
It's a great model number.
Yeah. Well, it's gotten kind of hard to remember now because it used to be like 1 or 2 X series, and now there's like 10 that
Yeah.
are either announced or upcoming, or already released or upcoming. But basically, like the Threadripper chip is a lot quicker, and it's a lot quicker because it has more cores. Now, how much quicker? Well, you know, something I recall is that in 7-zip, which is a file compression benchmark, that file compression requires a lot of processor resource. If you're doing a lot of files, actually still requires a pretty fast processor to get those compressed down quickly. And on that benchmark, the combined benchmark, you get around 52,000 with the Core i7-7900X. Now the Threadripper, if I recall right, did around 72,000
Wow.
in that benchmark. So that's a big increase.
Yeah.
In the Core i9, that was already the fastest that we'd ever seen in that benchmark. And usually when something comes along and it's like the new fastest in processors these days, it'll come along and it'll beat it by, you know, a small margin.
Right. Just
You know,
a small
5,
percentage.
10%. But, you know, Threadripper came along and just completely demolished that. It was the same thing in Cinebench. Do you have the
I had the
Cinebench numbers
Cinebench
up there,
scores.
Brad?
Yeah, so there are 2 Threadripper chips, an $800 one, which is the 1920X, and the $1,000 one, which is the 1950X. So for context, Cinebench is a multi-core powered rendering test, so it just does a really high power render and basically spits out a score. And the previous world record for a multi-core chip was the Ryzen 1800X, which someone had overclocked on like liquid nitrogen to reach a score of about 2200. The Core i9-7900X scored 2169, so it actually came close to that just without any extra overclocking.
Wow.
The 1920X got 2383, so it beat that record that the 1800X had set just right out of the box. And the 1950X scored 2971, so it pushed almost 3,000.
That's the Threadripper 1950X.
Yeah, so it just took a massive, like you see the 20X at $200, $250 cheaper beats out the i9-7900X in a lot of cases, in a lot of these multi-core cases. So
That's pretty crazy. I mean, just coming on like that and taking on, you know, the big ones.
yeah, and on top of it, their platform support is really good. It's something that like isn't really talked about that much, but you know, on an Intel chip, you get so many PCIe lanes, so you can do, you know, at the top end chip, you get 44 on that i9, which is enough for 2 cards at full SLI, like maybe 3 on 8X. You know, you start hitting that wall immediately, as opposed to all the Threadripper chips, even down to the $550 one, have 64 PCIe lanes, Doesn't matter what the chip is, unlike Intel, where you get down to that i7 7820X, which is the next step down from the 7900X, and you're down to 28 PCIe lanes. So you don't even, I mean, you're already running up against issues on two X16 cards. So as far as like, I mean, that's not going to matter for gaming so much, but as far as workstation demands go, and as far as 3-4 card setups, Threadripper is just a better platform.
Yeah, just all around, you would recommend Threadripper over.
If you're spending that much, and if you're spending that much, you really got to have a reason to spend more than $300 is sort of already a high-end price point for a processor.
Absolutely, yeah.
$1,000 means you're doing something
that's
that
your
requires
job. You got to
that.
get your money's worth out of that.
Yeah, exactly. That computer is making you money rendering things or and that kind of thing. And I think the extra cores too have the benefit of the fact that you can do a workload that works across 4 or 8 cores, maybe isn't all that well distributed, and then you can do something else, because a lot of times computers just get tied up rendering out a video or encoding something or compressing something, and that's all they can do. But you can do other things with these,
Man, and it's just so impressive.
On the note of the price, like a lot of people are going to be asking about this for gaming.
I've seen some questions coming through about that right now. Yeah,
Threadripper for gaming. We did do a few gaming tests on it. It is fast, but not any faster than Core i7 like 7700K or a Ryzen 7 1700X. It's in that same league, performance-wise. So, this isn't really a chip for gaming at all.
Okay.
Certainly it can handle games, but, games are not multi-threaded enough to take advantage of a processor like this. So you're not really seeing the benefit of the chip. And considering the price, that's a pretty big issue for you. If you're building a gaming rig, you want to get as fast as you can for as little money as you can, and Threadripper really doesn't do that. It's not really aimed at that.
So from a gaming standpoint, what would you recommend then, as opposed to the Threadripper?
Just for context, one of the things that we saw at 1080p with Deus Ex Mankind Divided on an RX 580, the lowest frame rate we saw was 49.8. And the highest we saw was 50.6, and that's from the Ryzen 3 1200 all the way up to the Threadripper 1950X. Like, the GPU was just the bottleneck there, no matter what we did, and every chip in the Ryzen family, all the way up and down, was able to score exactly the same score, basically. So that's it depends what you're running. Like, we saw a little bit of a difference with the 1080 Ti; it was a little more pronounced, but that's just you're at a certain point. If you're only wanting one mid-range card, there's absolutely no need for this. Again, unless you're doing something else. If you're also like using it to stream and encode or stream and record or stream to multiple places, maybe where you're doing a lot of video stuff, but then you're not talking about a gaming computer anymore.
Right. Then you're talking about a workstation.
Yeah. As far as gaming computers go, I think we kind of had talked about during the Ryzen roundup, if you're going that way of being like a 1300X alongside an RX 580 is a good pairing. And if you're going up to like a 1080 or 1080 Ti or a Vega, you might want to go for like the Ryzen 5.
Well, let's get in there and talk about the Vegas. And again, that was kind of the overall question that we had, talking about just AMD in general and where they've come with all of their products over this last year. But when it comes down to the Vega and the AMD Radeon RX Vega 56 and the 64, and I think you guys tested the 56. Is that right?
We tested both.
Tested both. Okay. And versus the NVIDIA GTX 1080, like what one will you buy if you're getting ready to buy one right now, and where they come in all around. So maybe we should just go with a basic review, kind of talk about some of the stuff with the AMD Radeon RX Vega. Like, what did you guys see when you were testing it out? What stood out?
I'm just pulling up benchmarks here, but
okay.
Yeah, so here, for those of you watching on the video, we've got the card here. You can see it looks pretty much like other high-end AMD cards or low-end AMD cards have recently. Not anything too different about the way Vega looks, which we thought was a little disappointing maybe. It is a very nice feeling card. A lot of the less expensive AMD cards, reference designs that look like this, will use more plastic than this does. They won't have a backplate in all cases, where this one does. So it does feel very premium. Of course, also, you have to realize very few people are going to be actually buying this particular reference design. Most people are going to get one that's from a third party.
Yeah.
Like Asus or we have a Zotac GTX 1080 Ti here on the table. And that looks nothing like the regular reference NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti. But a few things you'll notice right away. It's not a particularly huge card, actually, by the standards of these cards. It's pretty much the size you would expect. It's about 10 inches long. It's about, what did I measure it at? Around 4.5 inches wide, if I recall, and about 1.5 inches tall. And that's very normal for this. And in fact, a lot of less powerful cards will be the same size these days. So as far as like whether you can fit it into your rig, that's not too much of an issue. If you can fit most other video cards, you can probably get one of these.
That's good.
And the only thing you might want to worry about is the power, because you might notice if you're watching on a video, it's got two 8-pin power connectors, and that is a lot of juice. Let's see, what is this GTX? Does it have
that also has two 8-pin.
Yeah. So this is a much.
only has one.
Yeah, so the GTX 1080 Ti, to be clear, this is the highest end NVIDIA card, and this one is faster than Vega. And that also requires two 8-pins. But GTX 1080, you said, was a 1 8-pin, right?
Yeah, it's much lower power.
And what was the power draw, like the power supply recommendation for Vega?
The 64 pulls 295 watts, which is 45 more than the 250 watt on the 1080 Ti. And of course, it's not going to pull that all the time, but that's sort of its theoretical under max load. Here's how much power it's drawing.
It's something you pay attention to, though, if you're going to be buying it. Be aware of it.
Definitely.
Be cognizant of that.
They recommend a 750 watt power supply. I'd say that's at least true. It's a card that draws a lot of power for, to produce that kind of performance. More so, I think I was just trying to find the 1080. I think the 1080 is only like 180 or something. It's like
watts, yeah.
Yeah,
wow,
it's much lower.
That's a lot.
Well, yeah,
lower.
but I mean, and especially once you get up to the liquid cooled Radeon RX Vega 64, it is 345 watts.
Okay.
So that's some serious power to run that pump.
Yeah.
It's just something.
Yeah, the liquid cooled one
you have to
also
be
has
aware
a
of.
higher clock speed.
Yeah, it does.
By a fair margin.
Yeah.
Like so yeah, you got to be aware like the Vega card does use more power. Now, as far as the performance goes, and whether you get it over the GTX 1080 or the 1070 or the 1080 Ti, what were those results looking like?
So,
and this is what it comes down to, just for you watching like our question, which one would you buy when it comes down to it? Like if you're in the market for a new GPU, a new video card, which one do you go for? So yeah, these benchmarks are definitely important. So what do we have here?
Well, so at 1080p in, let's say, Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the Vega 56 and 1080 got 74 frames per second at ultra detail, while the 64 got 78, and the 1080 Ti got 98. So it still has a pretty decent lead, depending on the game. Battlefield 1 at 1080 Ultra, we had 127 and 125 from the 56 and 1080, once again, like right next to each other. The 64 at 138, and the 1080 Ti at 165.
Okay.
So if you really need that big power difference, and we can move on to 1440p here too, but these these are definitely differences to note. I mean, Civilizations was one of the ones that actually was different. We can get to that in a bit, but even at 1440p, it's actually almost a little more dramatic.
Yeah.
But the 56 tends to swing right at the 1080. They tend to just be right on with each other most of the time, and with the 64 taking a slight lead over it.
Yeah, our general results were in 3D Mark, the Vega 56 was behind the GTX 1080.
Okay.
And the 64 was right in line with the GTX 1080.
Okay.
In the game benchmarks, both the Vega cards were at a general advantage over the GTX 1080, except for For Honor. So we tested other games we tested were Civilization 6, where things were pretty much tied with, I thought, a very slight lean towards, and we're talking like 1 frame per second here, so nothing that's really noticeable.
The 1080 Ti for some reason fell way behind in Civ 6, but I don't know what the deal with that is.
The Deus Ex Human Revolution, that was a lean for Vega. They won those, even with the Vega 56 over the GTX 1080. Battlefield 1, that was probably the clearest win overall for Vega over the GTX 1080. And then For Honor, that actually swung very clearly towards the NVIDIA cards. So, there are games out there where either way, depending on what your card is, you might see an advantage
Right.
for
So
the
if you're a
NVIDIA card
huge-
or for the AMD card.
If you're a huge For Honor
But
fan,
overall,
right,
it was a win for Vega.
Sure, but a slight one. I mean,
A
these
s-
cards
a
are all
slight
within, especially with the chip we're running. Our system is running a i7-6950X, which is very, very powerful CPU, which is more than most of these cards I think are probably going to be paired up with.
Right.
And, we're talking about, Battlefield 1 at 1440p Ultra is, it's 91 on the 1080 and 96 on the 56. I mean, it's 10 frames per
But the
second.
56 is $100 less.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's sort of we unfortunately didn't have a GTX 1070 on hand to test with these particular cards, which would have been nice because AMD is actually pitching the Vega 56 as a GTX 1070 competitor, which I think is actually underselling the card by quite a bit. The Vega 56 is really something that can kind of like keep on par or beat the 1080 in a lot of situations. At a lower price, so that's nice. That's definitely like sort of that's a win. And I would say like right now the Vega cards are the ones to buy at that sort of high end price point over the Nvidia cards. They're not a ton faster. They're not clobbering Nvidia, but hey, like at the end of the day, like you want the card that's faster, and if it's just a little bit faster, well, I mean, it's still faster.
Yeah.
So
why not? At that point?
So why not?
And talking about just the price really quick, just to update on that. So the AMD Radeon RX Vega 56 is $399. Is that about right?
Yeah.
$499 for the 64.
So that's where they'll start.
That's
right. AMD's listed price, but of course, other
We all
board
know how that
partners
works.
they'll overclock them. They'll put a big cooler and RGB lighting on them. They'll crank the price up $40. But typically, there are a couple of models that are available at that price point. Although, there are good and bad things going on here with pricing, right? Because on one side, we have this problem where all the AMD RX 480 and 580 cards are getting just bought up like crazy for miners.
Yeah.
Which we talked about, which is driving the price sky high on these cards.
And listen to the Close to the Metal episode about that. We've got a whole detail about how that's happening and why that's happening.
Yeah.
And the problem is that at $400, these cards have over 10 teraflops of computing power, which is really, really high. So they are definitely going to get picked up by people running Bitcoin mining rigs still.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a problem that is really avoidable. I mean, if you're making high power equipment,
It's just what it is.
it's just what it is.
And unfortunately, we're going to run an article about this within the next few days. But doing a quick price check now that the cards have started to come available, and they only just started to come available like later in the day yesterday. I'm seeing on Amazon like the Vega 64s are at $900. Yeah,
Wow.
because they've been bought. They've been bought out.
Dang.
And the only cards that are left
$800
are
to
ones-
$900?
Yeah.
Wow. And
The
at
only
$499
cards
is
the only
what they
cards
set
that are
the price
left
at.
are the ones that people bought specifically to scalp, the price,
and resell them back to
and resell them at
everybody.
higher prices
Yeah.
on Amazon's third party market.
Wow.
So, and the bundles, AMD, so to try and combat this, they released some cards in bundles where there was a higher price, but you also got discounts on other gaming hardware. But those bundles appear to be largely sold out. So
that doesn't even dissuade those people. They'll just buy the bundle.
Yeah, well, and that was the
Get
thing.
rid of
Is
the-
that was the plan, was to try and like upcharge. But I think it was like $100
Yeah.
more, and you got $100 off a Samsung FreeSync display, $200 off Ryzen chip and motherboard combo, or $100 off a Ryzen chip and motherboard combo, and a couple of free games. Which is something that like people who are Bitcoin mining or people who are trying to flip those are happily going to take the discount and just sell them right back again. If you've already got the infrastructure to buy cards
Absolutely.
at launch and sell them, you'll sell a motherboard, you'll sell a chip too, you'll sell a monitor. You don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't
So,
matter at that point. 'cause you're just
I don't
using
know
it for
that
one.
was.
yeah.
If that's, I mean, I don't know what they can do.
There's
to
nothing.
keep
I mean,
that,
there's nothing they
If
can do.
somebody has
except-
that much money and they're willing to buy it, they're gonna buy it.
The only thing they can do is saturate the market with as much product as possible and hope that basically these resellers strike out and start returning them, start dropping their prices to have to get rid of them, and that it sort of creates like a flood of products so that the people who want them for Bitcoin mining can get them first. Like, that's just sort of how it is right now with cards.
And to be fair, like checking the prices on Amazon for the 1080, like a lot of those are also selling for $750, $800 right now. Still, like we've run a lot of coverage on this lately about the Bitcoin mining and how it's affecting the price of these. And the Vega the Vega 56 coming out at $400. That's a really nice value, I think. And if you can snag one of those, that's awesome.
Right.
It's going to be a really good card that'll serve you well. We also like the software on them. It's great drivers and everything. Mm-hmm. So the problem is just getting one of these cards in at that price.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, like if you want one of these cards, my recommendation would be like go sign up for every in-stock email on every major retailer. Yeah, because when Amazon gets these cards itself, they'll sell them at like a decent price. Like it's not like Amazon and Newegg doing this. Like they'll sell you the card at the regular price. The problem is that
they're out of product.
Everyone else buys them, and then they turn around and resell them on the third-party market of those exact same websites. And
there's nothing they can do about that.
I mean, not really.
It's making them money.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're making money regardless. Couple of questions. We do have some questions here that I wanted to get in to see if you guys want to answer these. Jacob's asking, do you think driver updates could increase the FPS? Talking about the Vega. Yeah.
Oh, sure. The driver updates always increase the FPS. That's why, we oftentimes go back and do recheck some of the numbers on the older video cards as we do these reviews because we see there are increases over time.
Okay.
So yeah, the performance will get better, but the other thing is that NVIDIA is going to do the same thing. So I wouldn't count on that being like something that's going to get you a big advantage over time.
Although there does tend to be a bit more acceleration in terms of that right at the launch of the card, because like a lot of the developers haven't had time with a Vega card, and there's going to be weird things that pop up, weird bugs and stuff like that that get quashed.
I don't like the. I wouldn't count on any of that stuff. It's the same sort of thing that when Ryzen came out, everyone was like, there was like this whole thing that happened where people were like, well, actually, they're going to be so much faster in 3 years because developers are going to optimize for them. And it's like, who knows? I don't know what's going to happen in 3 years.
Right.
Like, you shouldn't buy, your thing because in 3 years you think maybe The Witcher 4 is going to be super optimized for Ryzen. You have no way of knowing that. Yeah. So just buy what looks good now. Fortunately, Vega looks good now. So
Vega does. Jacob is asking, NVIDIA will hopefully be releasing the HBM2 2080X series in a few short months. Do you think that's possible, or is that something to wait for? Because talking about waiting for cards is
the next the next platform for NVIDIA to talk about its cards is going to be Gamescom.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on that and see what they say, because that would be. I mean, if I was NVIDIA and I was going to talk about my next big video card, that would be a really good place to do it. I mean, it's a gaming conference and a gaming developer conference. So, NVIDIA is has so many things to talk about right now. A lot of times they have a conference and ends up being all about self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's because that conference was about self-driving cars or AI. But yeah, Gamescom's probably, watch that one. Watch that live stream if you're interested in NVIDIA's next thing, I would say.
All right. So that's kind of, where to see as far as what's going to be coming next. Well, taking a look at this, just getting back to our original question, which one would you buy right now? If you were starting over from scratch, are you going to go with the RX Vega or are you going to go with the...
I think I'd buy whatever one I could get for a good price.
Yeah.
I think we're sort of that's sort of something that I've said about products before, where it's like these are so comparable that you should just buy whatever one is the better deal on the day you have the cash in your hand to buy it. And I think with GPUs, that's sort of the deal right now. Like if you can pick up either of these cards or a 1080 and you need that kind of performance at retail price or anything close to it, then you should probably pull the trigger on it. Yeah. I just think we're at a point of if the prices on the Vega stuff is already that high, we're at a point of being close to inaccessible. So you've either got to go really low end, or you've got to go, or you've got to just be ready to go.
The practical reality of that is right now there's a huge issue with video cards in general, and that's a whole nother problem. But if you can get them at the prices that they're supposed to be sold at, and if you're building one from a system from scratch, I would say that I would take the Vega 56 right now as a card that would be a very strong contender for my money.
Yeah.
At $400, it delivers a really good level of performance for that. And I also think that AMD's actually sort of leapfrogged NVIDIA right now with the quality of their driver interface. GeForce used to be the better. Like they kind of pushed that really heavily a few years back. They had GeForce Experience came out. It has all these extra features like recording games and optimizing your games, and it had a really nice interface. But that hasn't really evolved a lot recently, and now AMD has a new interface that looks really nice and really slick. It makes it really easy to overclock your card as well. So that's definitely a plus.
I think overall it's exciting just with AMD making this push. It's going to push Intel and Nvidia to really increase like their next generation or whatever they're going to be doing next.
It already has.
Like they have to. They have to respond to it.
Yeah,
which is good overall.
Yeah, we've already seen Intel, on its high-end chips making changes and making price adjustments, and we've, Nvidia hasn't really had a chance to respond yet, which is I think just how their product cycle works. That Intel is kind of constantly on this constant cycle of releases, whereas Nvidia isn't. And Nvidia's sort of, they're going with the flow and doing it in chunks.
But they did drop the price on the 1080 to $500
if you can find one.
A couple months before Vega came out.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was a direct response to, Vega. Like, they knew that Vega was coming out, and, these sort of things are not so secret. Like, Nvidia knows Vega is coming out. They probably have a guesstimate as to what it's going to do based on its hardware specs and just based on the reality that AMD is not going to come out with a card at the same price that absolutely blows away NVIDIA.
Right.
Because that wouldn't make a lot of sense as a business. You'd be giving away something you can charge more for. So, yeah, NVIDIA has already responded with that, price drop. You can imagine if the GTX 1080 was at its original price and Vega came out, it would be no contest.
Right.
No contest. AMD absolutely destroys it. But because they dropped the price, we're more of like, well, it's a little bit of a victory.
Right.
And I'm sure that the next time that NVIDIA comes out with something new, they're going to be very aggressive with the pricing on that too, and make sure that whatever it is going to, very heavily challenge AMD. It's just good that we actually have the two sides that can compete because, for the last, 2 years, there hasn't really been a serious AMD competitor for the high-end market.
Yeah.
I remember it was like a joke. People would ask me, I'm thinking about building a gaming PC, Core i5 and a 970.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's
that was
what
the
you
computer
do.
you built. If you wanted a gaming PC, you
go-to.
bought a Core i5 and a 970, and that was life. That was, there was... If you were spending less than $100 on a processor, it could be AMD or it could be Intel. And anything above that, there wasn't a competitor. And if you were trying to spend $150 on a GPU, you got an AMD, but otherwise you didn't. And it was boring, frankly. This stuff is really good. It's awesome for the whole computing community, and it's awesome to have this competition and have things to put head to head and say which one should you buy and not have a clear answer all the time.
Right.
To say well, maybe you want a Ryzen chip, maybe you want a Core i7, maybe you want the 1080 Ti, and maybe you want a Vega. I don't know.
Well, and it pushes everybody to do better the next time.
Yeah.
Competition is healthy and it's good.
Yeah.
And all the articles for reviews of everything of this are at digitaltrends.com too. So you can go there and check those out. And again, this is Close to the Metal. We do this every week at 10 a.m. Pacific time right here on Tuesdays at Digital Trends Live on Facebook and YouTube. And this is, since we are kind of wrapping up, Brad, it is your last episode. We talked about it earlier. We needed to have a through the years montage for Brad, of black and white photos showing.
Are we gonna get one?
Well, I think we'll need to get one made. I didn't get it. I figured you were going to handle that yourself. But,
sorry, I didn't get that quite finished up.
Wait, he has to handle his own montage?
I figured, it's his last days here. He's got to put in some more work, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I filled my last couple days with that as a project.
Working on your own tribute.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, we are going to miss you here on the show and here at DT. And, congratulations on everything that you're doing and moving on.
Thanks.
And all that.
It's been fun.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're going to miss people that, write in on some of the articles and some of the comments.
Yeah, Brad's going to
miss I'll be in the comments from now on.
Now you're going to be that
in
guy.
there on Facebook every Tuesday.
I didn't think about it on that aspect. Okay.
Just grilling Matt.
This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. How many fans you got, bro?
There's gonna be so many like fake accounts on. Every time I see a fake account, I'm just gonna assume it's Brad.
That's a good assumption, I think.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, Close to the Metal. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Get the audio version and check out all the back episodes. We did one a couple of weeks ago about Bitcoin and everything is and just mining and all of that stuff associated with these GPUs. So definitely check that out. Get some more information on it. Thanks for watching so much, and we will be back next week with another episode.